Hi, Jonathan. Thank you for joining me on the Law Firm Accelerator. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it, Victoria.
Awesome. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your practice and where you're located?
Yeah, my name is Jonathan Breeden. I'm a divorce attorney in the Raleigh, North Carolina suburbs. I have offices. My primary office is in Garner, which is the home of Scotty McCreery, if anybody likes country music, former American Idol winner. And then we have satellite offices in Smithfield, Anger, and in Raleigh, North Carolina, which is the state capital of North Carolina. And I'm in one of the fastest growing areas in America. This area is absolutely exploding. North Carolina is routinely ranked the number one place to live, the number one place to do business. I would agree with all of that. So it's been very fortunate. I've been in business for 24 years. I opened my law firm in the year 2000. We currently have 6 other attorneys and 18 employees total. And we service a lot of people here in the greater Raleigh area with divorce, family law. We do some guardianships, some simple wills, some powers of attorney, adoptions, stuff like that. So anything that affects the family, we kind of do here at the Breeden Law Office. And, for a long time, it was just me, but now we got all kinds of team members and growing fast, just like my community continues to grow fast.
That's amazing. So it sounds like you are doing really, really well. So my first question is going to be, what have you done with your marketing to get yourself to this point? Something must be working well for you.
Yeah, the marketing over 24 years has been quite the adventure. The biggest change was, I had a fine law website back in for a long time. Where I was with fine law from like 2005 to 2016, and that's like just stopped working. I was getting 80-90% of my business off of my website. I didn't have any social media at the time or any of that stuff. And I needed to get a website that was going to work. And and I don't have anything bad to say against fine law, but at that time they were having some trouble. I think they were doing some backlinks that maybe Google didn't like. You can Google that. Anybody that had a fine law site at that time, there's stories and books about it. But we were able to make a decision. And that's the key thing, Victoria, is you have to make decisions to do something different. And it's hard, right? You're scared, but you have to make decisions. So we made a decision to move on from fine law, and we located a different web company in Columbus, Ohio. And when we made that switch, we went from a website that was not working the way we needed it to having a website that was working. And that probably was the single best decision I've made in the 24 years of practicing law, because if you have a site that is working, has proper SEO, that is being updated, that is Google changes the rules every 6 months, where it's being updated, where, blogs are being written, you're adding video content, you're doing the things that Google wants to see. And, it's their world, not ours. And so, and you get a site that's able to work, then all of a sudden you're going to start to have more leads. And then, of course, the rest of it has been, what do you do with all those leads? But that was really the biggest change for us. And then as far as the marketing, after we sort of figured out what to do with this website, because the website for many, many years, until probably the last year and a half or 2 years, was generating more leads than I could humanly do with lack of staff, the Great American Quit Out through COVID, all of that stuff. I didn't need to do anything else other than live off of this website for a very long period of time, Victoria. But I do think in the last couple of years, we're not doing a lot, but we're now doing some local service ads, and we're doing some other stuff that has been successful. And once again, you have to know your numbers. You know what I mean? You have to kind of know, how many leads you have, how many sets you have, how many shows, how many hires, how many people referring to you, this sort of perfect client life cycle that our business coach, Richard James, your practice mastered, he teaches. You have to understand the numbers because almost all law firms have enough leads. They just don't nurture them properly. And that's the thing. And I know the hardest thing for marketers about you, Victoria, is you're doing a good job. You're providing leads, and they're dropping the ball with the leads, and they're calling and blaming you when it's not you, it's them, because they're not managing the leads properly.
That is an excellent point. So it's about taking action and making the switch, even though sometimes it's scary. In terms of managing leads, actually, not to give myself a plug or anything, but I do run another company called Follow Up With. And what we do is we create a system where all you have to do is add the first and the last name, add the phone number in the email, and then you tell us how often you want this person contacted. We have an automated way for you to text, email, and even leave voicemails for this person for as long as you may want. So if you, and the reason why I create it is because I'm struggling following up with my own leads, right? Because I speak with somebody, I'm excited, and then they get busy. And this happens to lawyers all the time. So following up with those leads is super important, whether you do it through a system like mine or whether you do it because you have a receptionist, even though it's cheaper now to do it through AI, which is how we have designed. But you can certainly have a receptionist do that stuff. But taking the action and following up. Now, let me ask you a question. When you picked your agency, how did you know they were doing a good job? Because I do have a lot of people who come to me and say, I was with this agency for a year, and after a year, I know I was paying for nothing. But while they were doing something, it felt like they were doing something. They were sending me reports, and there was something going on. So what is it that you're looking for when you find yourself a good marketing agent? What are the signs for you?
When I was trying to make the decision to switch, I actually got a referral to this agency from, so I mean, basically what I did was I ran a Google search. I went to the top 10 sites in Raleigh, and I went to the bottoms to see who did the sites. Some of them say by the law firm, and some of them say by who actually did them. And so really what we did was we, the top site, one of the top sites in Raleigh that was owned by a friend of mine, was done by search engine guys out of Austin, Texas. They're huge. And so we called them and we were like, hey, you build us a site? And they're like, no, we got a non-compete. So we couldn't build another family law site in the Raleigh area. But when they had a non-compete, they said, well, we recommend you call this company in Ohio, Postali, and maybe they can help you. And so we called them. We were also talking to a company that was connected to the Yellow Pages out of St. Louis, Missouri, as they realized that the Yellow Pages, this is 2016, so the Yellow Pages are just about dead, and they're headed to death. And so this company had rebranded itself as doing, websites for lawyers and stuff. And so I was trying to decide between the two. One of the things I did was I looked at the websites that they had done for other people. And so I went to the sites. I kind of looked at the feel, for them. I ran Google searches to see where these sites were showing up, because most people are not going to come in through the homepage. They're coming in through a content page. And so I wanted to see if these content pages for these other sites that they had built were ranking, that kind of stuff to see. And one thing you can do now, they didn't really have this then, but you can ask them, or you can make it yourself. They call it the scatter shot or the scatter pattern, where you can get where any individual website is ranking within a 5 or 7 mile grid of whatever site that it's based on. And so, if I'm out there looking now, what I want to do is get 10 sites they've already done, and I'm going to either go run that scatter pattern for myself, or I'm going to get somebody, or I'm going to ask them to give it to me so that I can see where are their sites ranking in the areas that they're trying to compete. And that'll tell you a lot right there. And there's tons of online website audit tools now that are fairly cheap that'll tell you if you've got the right meta tags. I have tons of these companies, Victoria, are always offering me free analysis of my website, which I always take them up on, because I'm always curious, are we doing something wrong? I always send it to my website company. Sometimes they say, yeah, we're going to fix that. Sometimes they're like, we disagree. So, stuff like that. But I mean, you gotta do your homework. And then you gotta be willing to spend some money. Cause it's a lot of work to have a site that's going to do well in major markets. You know what I mean? Maybe not as much work to do well in smaller markets, but if you're going to be in a major market like Raleigh, Wake County has, well over 1 million people now. Yeah. My primary account here in Johnston is now up to 270,000 people. You're going to have to really do some work, and you're going to have to pay some money, and you got to decide, do I want to pay the money to get this done? I mean, my website, costs more than $100,000 a year.
Wow.
Like, holy cow, right? Like, it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But, when you think about the amount of money that we're able to make because of the leads it can generate, it's worth it. I mean, it's definitely worth it. But, the other thing is you got to look at it as, it's not just website. Like the company we use, they do a little bit of everything. You know what I mean? They help us place offices. They can help us with billboards. They can help us with, coming up with, catchphrases and, value statements and, all of those types of things that you do need when you're scaling. Because, when you go from 4 employees to 18 employees, like I did in less than 4 years, it's no longer just me and my wife and one of my wife's friends and a secretary, right? Like it's a much different animal now than it was just 4 years ago. And so, you just got to be aware, and you got to be, you got to know your numbers, right? You've got to know, and in 2020, I didn't know any numbers. I didn't have any idea what you needed to know, but, I know now, and that allows you to make strategic decisions.
Okay. So make sure you check the bottom of the website. I love that tip because I get so many clients coming to me from checking the bottom of their competitors' websites. It's the best way to get clients because then they appreciate your value. Make sure you do your research, make sure you ask questions. And there's so much information out there. Certainly there's good tools out there. Take the meetings, even if somebody just wants to give you a little bit of advice, or maybe they even are a competitor. Take the meeting. Usually it's not going to hurt you, and you might learn something. Yeah, those are great tips. So now that we've walked through everything you've done right, and you've done so much right, I want you to tell me about what you're struggling with, because we had a little chat, and I know not everything is perfect just yet.
The one thing that we're struggling with right now, and we're new to Facebook advertising with any kind of structure. You know what I mean? We've never done anything where we spend any real money or any of that stuff. So what we're trying to do right now is, can we convert Facebook into active clients? You know what I mean? So can you do direct response marketing on Facebook and do it successfully? And there's a ton of law firms out there doing it right. There are law firms not doing it right. We're only about 3 or 4 months into this, and we have not been able to have the success that we thought we were going to have. The way we're structuring it right now is we got some static graphics, pictures of, the wife and with the teddy bear in the box moving out of the house because we do divorces. We've got some of that. We've got some videos where I'm trying to just, I look like I'm in the lights and I'm really big on the screen, and I'm like, are you afraid you're never going to see your kids again? Just sort of heaven or hell type video.
The ultimate fear, yeah.
Right. We sort of speak to people's fears, right? So, and what we're attempting to do is, if we can get them to fill out the click, or they fill out the form, what we would like them to do is say, well, we're not done yet. Will you book a call with us? You know what I mean? So what we're trying to do is seeing if we can get them to self-schedule a call with one of our intake agents, not with an attorney, not a call, just schedule a call, with conflicts and, the fact that my website is so good that I get a lot of non-qualified leads. I get a lot of calls from Charlotte. Charlotte's 3 hours away from Raleigh. Charlotte's a great city. I don't practice in Charlotte, but it has 1 million people too, and I get calls from there. So we have to do a pretty good job of vetting because we get so many out of area calls just because of the strength of our website. But what we're just trying to do is, can we get them to self-schedule a call with us to where our intake team can call them and make sure we can help, make sure we don't have a conflict. We do charge for consults, collect that fee, and see if we can't get them in here.
Okay. So we spoke about this, and there's a couple of issues here that I'd like to share with you, and hopefully it'll be helpful to the listeners as well. So when somebody goes online on Google and they put in divorce lawyer, generally that means they are at the end of the buying decision. They're looking for a divorce lawyer, or they're very close to a hire, right? If they go on Facebook and they're not looking for a divorce lawyer, they're just scrolling on Facebook, looking at cat memes or whatever they do, and you go, hey, we are a divorce lawyer. Maybe they go, well, I'm not really happy in my marriage, and maybe I should be looking for a divorce lawyer, but are they ready to buy? And most of the time when a person is ready to buy, what do? They go on Google, right? So what you need to do is, you're talking about top of the funnel, bottom of the funnel. So when we start in marketing, if you're starting with people who are not yet ready to buy, you're starting at the very bottom of the funnel, and these people need to be brought into your sphere of influence and educated. So if these guys are trying to show one ad and then convert that person, chances are nothing is going to happen. If, on the other hand, what they're doing is, well, if you're thinking of getting divorced, these are the 5 things you should be doing in advance before you tell your soon-to-be former spouse. Oh, and by the way, we have a checklist for you. Why don't you give us your email and we will send that checklist for you free of charge. And that's somebody who is very much at the bottom of the funnel, just considering. And then we have their email, and maybe we retarget them on Facebook again. Maybe we go back to how much alimony would you qualify for, or how much child support would you qualify for? So when we have those emails, we can actually target those people on Facebook, right? And we can target something called lookalike audiences, which means people who are similar to them. So other people who might be considering divorce, but are not quite there yet. So if they're trying to convert people who are not ready, waste the money. What you need is a funnel, and you need to start with those people at the bottom. And a few of them are not, a good portion of them are not going to convert, and then a few more, and then a few more. The nice thing is, because you have good SEO, if they see you online, that's another touch point. They kind of, the brand is very important, because it's almost like they kind of see you, they trust you a little more. Then they see on Facebook again, maybe they see a video on YouTube, maybe they even see a billboard. And those are all touch points required. But if they're going straight to conversions, it's not going to work. So I would say, and we spoke about this before, I am, an SEO person, I'm a website person. If you are, and I don't do Facebook ads, but I understand the principle of it. Well, I do them for myself, of course, but I understand the principle of it. And you need to work with somebody who understands the entire conversion pyramid and can work on that for you. So I don't know if that's what they're doing at this point.
That I don't know. We do have some Facebook videos. We do have videos of, the 5 things I would do if I was getting ready to a divorce. I mean, we've got a lot of, we're very fortunate. I probably have shot, we have probably 150 to 200 YouTube videos where we're answering common questions, 3-minute type videos. I did those for a number of years with James Publishing out of California. Those are really helpful. I now do those in-house now. Now I have a social media coordinator. I have a studio. I have lights. I have, I didn't have any of that stuff for a long time. So, but yeah, so we try to put that stuff out there. And we have our podcast, but our podcast is a community podcast, Best of Johnston County, where we're interviewing community members, county commissioners, small business owners. So it's not really for the business. It's definitely not direct response. So we don't really put that on the business's Facebook page unless we're talking about divorce. We will put that on the podcast as its own Facebook page and its own social media and all that stuff. It's kind of crazy that it's its own thing now. But if we do the legal topics on the podcast, we will put it on our actual Breeden Law stuff, because what we were finding is all this content that had nothing to do with law was knocking down the content that we had that was about the law. So if you came to my Facebook page, you'd see me talking to a dentist. It wasn't answering your question about divorce. So
Yeah.
we've been trying to work on that over the last few months.
So what's important is, in addition to the content, which of course is very important, is the conversion you ask for at the end. So if you're asking somebody very low on the funnel to make a consultation call, they're simply not going to do it because they're just not ready. However, if you ask them for an email to give them more information, they may do it. And then you have to nurture that lead. Maybe you put them in an email system, maybe you send them a newsletter, that kind of thing. So it's all about, what are you asking of people, and are they ready to answer that call, so to speak, right? And when somebody finds you on Google, they're ready because they went on Google and they looked for you. So hopefully this makes sense. I do want to bring up a couple of things that I found interesting in your website. You mentioned overcoming a scarcity mindset that halted your law firm's growth. So I know this is a very common issue. What are the strategies you've used to help yourself get past that?
I think starting to study numbers, right? Like studying numbers and knowing that numbers are repeatable, right? So human beings being animals, if you go back to just the fact that we're animals, are programmed innately to focus on scarcity, because we have to eat, we have to have shelter. We're making thousands of decisions every second about whether you're dangerous, am I hot, am I cold, am I hungry, what all that kind of stuff. And so, for 20 years, I'm doing this, and I don't know how many leads I have. I don't know how many sets I have. I don't know how many shows I have. I don't know what my conversion percentage is of, I don't know my average case value. I don't know any of this stuff. I'm just practicing law. And because I didn't have the information, I had to get up I started literally until the middle of 2020, well, probably the end of 2019. I started every month with business debt, personal debt, no real business savings, and I had to go get a number every single month to break even. And I think that number was $35,000. That allowed me to pay for the website. It allowed me to pay myself a little bit of a salary. It allowed me to pay the 2 employees I had at the time, pay my rent, that kind of stuff. And so that's all I could think about is, on the first of the month, what am I going to do to bring in $35,000 this month? And so that's the scarcity, because I didn't have anything and I didn't know anything about any of these numbers. So when I got the business coach, Richard James, and I started tracking the numbers, well, then you can see a pattern. And so the way to overcome a scarcity mindset is to gain information, to educate yourself about what is actually happening. Because I didn't know. And because when you didn't know, your gut, your innate thing is there's not enough. You throw in a little bit of anxiety. I'm an anxious person. A lot of lawyers are. And it really was not a good situation. You didn't think you could hire anybody. You didn't think you could expand, because that's just one more, that's going to up that number I got to get every month. And, but once you start studying the numbers, then you have an idea, how many leads, how many sets, how many shows, what percentage hired me, what's my average case value, how many people are referring people to me, am I getting paid? Am I getting paid in full? What's my collection percentage? These are all things you have to know to be able to scale so that you can make a plan. I didn't know any of these things until, I found a coach. I found Richard James in 2020. And I just started listening to what the man said, and following his program and working with the people in his program. And it really took off from there. As far as, because here's the thing, here's what I found out, Victoria. I had all the leads in the world. I sit down at the first meeting I go, and I meet a guy named Bert Diener, who's a very successful attorney out of Wilmington, North Carolina, Diener Law. I think he's in 3 or 4 states now. I know he's in California. I know he's in Texas. So anybody listening out in California, Texas, he does immigration law. He may be in another state. I know he's in California. I know he's in Texas. He's also out of Wilmington, North Carolina. And he is a fascinating guy, and he studies leads, and he owns a CRM and all this stuff. And I was like, my website gets I don't know. At that time, I was getting 12,000 visitors a month, some crazy number. Now, how many are in North Carolina? Maybe 3,000 of those, but whatever. I've getting all these visits, but I didn't know anything about the difference between a visit to a website and a visit in my state either at the time. And he's like, man, if you did right by those leads, you could quadruple your business and never spend another dime on advertising. And I was like, what? You're out of your mind. Like, what are you talking about? He goes, you're not doing the leads right. I didn't even know what a CRM was. A client relationship manager. No clue. I never heard of a CRM. So I'm like, I didn't know anything about retargeting. I didn't know anything about email drip campaigns. I didn't know anything about outbound phone calls. Like all these things I'm doing now. And basically, we haven't really done that much more advertising. And we did exactly what the man said. We quadrupled it. And now we're going past that. And the only thing we added, literally, since having dinner with him at my first Richard James event in Phoenix, Arizona in August of 2020, really the only thing we've added is local service ads. And that's it. Other than that, we are still working with the leads off of the website. But now we have team members that make outbound phone calls. I now have a CRM. I have 3 team members in El Salvador, and we're making 5, 6, 7, 800 outbound phone calls a week to leads that have not either they didn't book, or they didn't show, or they didn't hire. Because with divorce law, you never know when somebody's going to be ready to leave. What I try to say is, bad husbands don't get better, and so they just don't. They don't get better, and so I don't know when. And women initiate 80 or 85% of all separations and divorces. So I don't care if we're calling a woman or a man. If we're calling a man, we don't know when the woman said, I've had enough, because you're not very good. And if I'm calling the woman, I don't know when she said, I've had enough, because he's not getting any better.
Follow up with those leads. Yeah. So you're doing, it's a more expensive way to do it by having staff to follow up. But whatever way you choose to do it, whether it's through an automated system or through humans, especially when you have a bigger office, you can afford to do humans. Whatever way you do it, following up is huge. Like we get the same thing. We have clients who come in who just do the follow-up system, and it's amazing. They'll convert 25, 30, 50% more people because they're following up constantly. And I think that is probably the best tip I can give anybody who is running a law office from a marketing point of view, is follow your leads. Well, it's a sales tip, right?
Tori, there's so many CRMs out there now.
Yeah.
The one I use is called 4Eyes, which is owned by Breeden and Richard James. And it's a version of Salesforce. But Lawmatics is out there. Clio Grow has gotten a lot better over the last 4 or 5 years than when I originally had Clio Grow 4 years ago. HubSpot is doing a good job. I'm told Salesforce is going to come out with a legal version of Salesforce, which may make it a lot more affordable than real Salesforce. So, I mean, you don't have to spend a ton of money to get a good CRM to manage the leads. But I would bet that 95% of the people listening to this podcast right now have enough leads if they would just nurture them properly. Build a structure to nurture the leads, and then build an intake structure to get them in and sell them. It's all together.
That makes so much sense. Jonathan, I know you have to run. I really appreciate you joining and, sharing some of your wisdom and some of your success here. I will post the links to some of those resources you mentioned in the podcast description. Thank you for joining us. Just stay for a few minutes so we can finish the uploading the podcast.